Que lo que? Estamos activos, bienvenido. And we are now una comunidad of more than 22,800. So muchas gracias to all y'all that have already subscribed. And if you haven't, what you waiting on? In the last lección, I explained the difference between ser and estar and how to use them both. If you haven't seen that lesson, I highly recommend that you back it up and then come back to this one, because this one will make way more sense after you've seen that first lesson. Porque en esta lección, I'm going to break down 3 common points of confusion between ser and estar that I wish someone had taught me when I was learning Spanish. So let's do it. One of the biggest points of confusion is location. Let me just make location real simple. For location, we always use estar unless we're talking about an event or where something originated from. This is one of the main reasons why I tell y'all, if you think about the difference between ser and estar as being permanent versus temporary, things start to get muddy. Here's a prime example of why this confuses people. If I wanted to say the store is in Texas, I would say, La tienda está en Texas. This has nothing to do with whether the store is located there temporarily or permanently. We use estar for locations, even in this case for the store, because it does not define the essence of what that store is. For example, Walmart is still Walmart regardless of whether it's in Texas or in Florida. If you were going to define Walmart, you might use a bunch of very creative adjectives, but I bet what you wouldn't say is Texas. So use estar for locations. As I mentioned, the only time you'll use ser to talk about locations is if you're talking about where an event is taking place or where something originated from. This is why to say where you're from, you say soy de. So for me to say I'm from Texas, I would say soy de Texas. Because this is a fact about me, it's part of my identity. So we use ser. The same is true for items. Este queso es de Francia. This cheese is from France. This is a key fact about the cheese. To talk about an event location, you use ser because the location is actually part of the identity of that event. So the concert is in the stadium would be el concierto es en el estadio. To make this a little easier, if you can switch is in with takes place in, then you'll use ser. The concert takes place in the stadium. Here's a different example to really highlight this difference. If you're new to a job and you ask where lunch is had, someone might say, El almuerzo es en la cafetería. Lunch takes place in the cafe. We don't want el almuerzo está en la cafetería because this makes it seem like the lunch is physically located in the cafeteria and you can just go right now and pick it up. We don't want to say that the lunch is physically in the cafeteria. We want to say that the event of lunch takes place in the cafeteria. So to summarize all that, locations is estar unless we're talking about an event or where something originated from. The second major point of confusion is death. This one also really isn't as complicated as we make it, honestly. Life and death are conditions. When you describe who you are to someone, I highly doubt that alive is on that list. Because being alive doesn't really define who you are. This is just a condition that you are currently experiencing. And as part of the life cycle, that condition will eventually change. So for life and death, we use estar. So está vivo or viva is it's alive. Está muerto or muerta is it's dead. And the very last one, bear with me on this one because it is a little bit trickier than the last two, is that we use estar for radical shifts. These are things that you might usually use ser for, but we use estar to show that this is not normally how this thing is. So for example, if someone's all dressed up and you want to compliment the way that they look, you would say, "Qué guapa estás." In this case, we don't want to use ser because we're not trying to say as a person you look good. We're trying to say right now in this moment you look good. Okay, so that's a fairly easy example, but let's look at one that's a little bit more complicated. Jorge es gordo. George is fat. But maybe you haven't seen Jorge in like 3 months, and now all of a sudden he's skinny. This is a radical shift for you because he is not how he usually is. So in this case, we'd say, Jorge está flaco. George is skinny. But after a while, if George continues to be skinny, this is no longer a radical shift because it becomes a part of who he is. So then you might start saying, Jorge es flaco. Because being skinny has become a part of who he is and is no longer just a condition that he's experiencing. Here's one more example. La manzana es verde. The apple is green. The color of the apple is a fact about it, so we use ser. But what if I wanted to say that a piece of fruit is green because it's not ripe yet? Then we'd say, la manzana está verde. The ripeness of fruit is just a condition that fruit is experiencing. So whether an aguacate is ripe or not, it's still un aguacate. So that's the nitty-gritty of ser versus estar in Spanish. And if you get into a moment where you don't know whether to use ser or estar, if it doesn't define who they are, use estar. Now that you understand the difference between ser and estar, en la próxima lección, we're going to play some juegos to help you actually work on using them. Gracias por estar aquí. Hasta la próxima.